What is happening, people? Welcome back to the Scarfey Spurs Talk Podcast. In this episode, we'll be reviewing that draw against Monaco in what was the third round in the Champions League. We'll also be looking ahead to Everton in the Premier League. So, of course, 2 games a week for quite a few games now for Tottenham. So it is busy with a lot to talk about, even though there's no goals in the Monaco-Tottenham game. But you know who I am. I'm Harry Scarfe, your host as always for tonight. Let's introduce my fantastic panel. Firstly, making his debut on the podcast tonight, I've got Simon. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you, Harry. How are you? You all right?
I'm very good, thank you, and appreciate you putting me in contact with Steve Perriman. Of course, had that interview with him that come out today, so thank you very much for that.
No, pleasure. Great interview. It was a great interview.
Thank you very much. And people haven't seen it, is available on YouTube or multi-platform. That's an interview with former Spurs player and captain Steve Perriman, who made the most appearances for the club. And it was a great chat. He actually revealed a lot in that about the past, which is really interesting, but also the current team, where he thinks the problems are and what is going well. Make sure to check that out. It's available anytime and everywhere, literally possible to listen to. So thank you, Simon, for coming on. Dustin, welcome back onto the podcast. How are you doing? And let people know where you're joining from and what time as well it is.
Hi, I'm joining from Singapore, and it's 3 in the morning.
Wow, 3 in the morning. That is like commitment. Just there. I say it every time. I still can't quite get my head around it. I'll be one of those people that goes, yeah, I'll do it. Then I'll be thinking, what am I doing? But that's just incredible. So thank you so much. And I do appreciate your commitment to this podcast. And Harry, great to have you back on. It has been a little while. How are you doing?
It's been a while, hasn't it? Yeah, long overdue. No, pleasure to be here, Harry. Thank you very much. Looking forward to it.
No worries. Thank you very much. And Martin, welcome back onto the podcast twice in quick concession, which is fantastic. How are you doing?
Thank you. Thank you so much. Glad to be here. Glad to see new faces. Glad to see Dustin. And well done. Congratulations to your podcast or your interview with Steve Perryman.
Thank you very much. It's very kind of you. Yeah, it was a very good chat and thoroughly enjoyed that. It come to me as a bit of a surprise, a last minute thing, so that was good fun. But before we get into it, let's quick shout out to all our partners, non-paid partners. You've got the Kitman, Everything Spurs Discord, Dan Gay Support Service Limited, In the 290, and also Tottenham Program Collector, who are the latest partner. Let's get into it then, talking Monaco. So for people who didn't see it, the Spurs starting 11 was Vicario. This is the back line firstly of Porro, Danso, Van der Ven and Gray. Midfield of Paulinia, Bentoncourt and Bergval. Then a forward line front three of Kudus, Richarlison and Odebear. Then the Spurs substitutes were Kinski, Austin, Spence, Byfield, Lise, Williams, Barnett, Sarr, Simmons, Johnson, Moani and Scarlett. Simon, can I start with you? What were your thoughts at the time when the team was released?
When I first saw the team, I was a bit unsure at first, Harry. To be honest, was unsure if Van der Ven would be at left back, maybe Paulinia in the centre of defence, because I think he played there in a previous Champions League game. But then, away from home, the setup I think was I was quite happy with it with Bentancur and Paulinia in the centre of midfield. And Archie Gray at left back, I thought played really well. So overall, I think it was the best lineup he could put out at the time.
Okay, that's fair enough. Thank you very much. Dustin, I'll come to you. Were there any surprises in there with you for that lineup? Of course, we are without 10 players. I mean, 9 through injuries and one who, in Mattis Tell, was our choice. So anything that struck you maybe that you didn't expect?
I think it was interesting to see Bergval in the lineup finally. I think that one of the problems that we've had was central ball progression, so I was happy to see Bergval there. Unfortunately, I wanted to see him there with Zabi because that is kind of like the combination you need for more creativity. I think one of the problems we've had is central ball progression and chance creation. We've been very over reliant on Kudus, so I was looking forward to seeing Bergval there with Zabi, but they got substituted for each other. So we are still kind of having a central block of 3 midfielders, two defensive box to box, and one creative. But I feel that we haven't quite seen two creative midfielders and one pivot. And I think that one of our problems with chance creation is that the lack of central creativity, and an over-reliance on Kudus. And in this game, at least we saw Odebear having one of his best games for us and providing some creativity on the left as well.
I'd agree with that. I agree with your whole assessment, but in particular the bit about Odebear, 100%. We'll get onto him a little bit later. Harry, can I come round to you? I want to talk about in particular Archie Gray when you saw him in the team. Can I get your reaction to that? But also, where did you think he'll play? Did you expect him to be at left back? I personally wasn't sure, but I didn't think it would be left back.
No, me neither. I think there was quite a few different lineup formations created. So obviously TNT, they had Paulinho at centre back with Van der Ven left back. BBC, I think they had Gray playing on the centre back and Van der Ven left back as well. But there are a few different ways that they sort of demonstrated it. For me, I would have probably assumed he was going to be left back. And to be fair, I think he was actually more of a centre half yesterday, but he was fantastic. I thought he was really, really good. I think Glenn Hoddle made a good point as well, that he was, again, like, he's still very young, but he's so composed on the ball, his challenges, his interceptions. He was really, really good. And obviously, yes, I saw the lineup come out. I was thinking, is Spence perhaps got a knock? Obviously, you'd like to think Spence would begin. But Gray showed why he can step up and put these performances in, because he was brilliant, I thought.
100%. Again, agree with that. Thank you, Harry, for that. But you're right. Nobody could seem to predict the lineup. We had some proper ones that were really. But yeah, even I have the Forza Football app, and they had Paulinho at centre back and Gray in this kind of midfield position. So yeah, it's completely unknown. 3 or 4 players that could have easily been moved, but we found out quite quickly that Gray was at left back. We get on to how we done later. Martin, Paulinho and Bentancur started together in midfield again. Spurs fans generally across social media seem to be a little bit skeptical of them starting together and seem to put defeats like we've got the Bournemouth defeat and the one recently against Villa partly down to that. Firstly, do you think that's fair? That it is their fault? And what was secondly, your reaction to seeing them both start together in the midfield again?
Yeah, when I saw the lineup, I was definitely disappointed that Thomas Frank has opted for 2 6s. That was genuinely my fault. I was expecting him to put in a Bergvall with a Xavi Simons, like Dustin has already mentioned, or maybe a Sarr with Xavi Simons. So I wouldn't blame Bentancur or Paulinho for making any mistakes or blaming them for the lack of creativity, but because they are natural 6s, I would say. I would say the blame should more lie on Thomas Frank for picking the 6s and expecting us to create many chances, because we are quite pragmatic and quite stable, I'd say, if we look at comparison to last season. But the fact that we play 2 6s definitely limits our creation of chances.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you very much. So at halftime then, it was Monaco 0, Tottenham 0. Of course, we know that's how it did end. But on the first half in particular, so XG, your expected goals, Monaco was 0.94 and Tottenham was 0.46. Harry, can I come back to you? What your thoughts on that first half? Do you think anyone had the upper hand?
If there was to be a team the upper hand, it probably would have been Monaco. To be honest, they had that one chance where they were in the penalty box, and I think he squared it when he probably should have gone for goal. And it was Archie Gray that got back and did the interception there. We had a good chance with Richarlison, but again, it's just like getting out your feet and shooting, because he takes far too long sometimes. It was after that nice cameo from Odebert though. He did quite well. He sort of like Cruyff turned, came back in, and then played it out wide to Richarlison. But no, I mean, it was tight. I mean, the second half, I think we all know how that went. Monaco really should have won it by 3 or 4 goals. But yeah, not much in it in the first half. But again, if a side should have been ahead at the break, it should have been Monaco, the hosts. Yeah.
That'd be fair, I think. Thank you for that. Moving on to the second half, 47th minute, Richarlison was booked. 57th minute, Monaco made their first substitution. Then on the hour mark, the 60th minute, Spurs made a double substitution. On comes Simons and Sarr for Bergvall and Bentancur, who made way. Then 69th minute, so 9 minutes later, Frank opted for another substitution, this time a single one. And yeah, he went with a double one in the end, because he made a single, then changed his mind. In the end, it was Johnson and Moani who come on for Odebear and Richarlison. And Monaco responding, 70th minute, they made a double substitution. It's just interesting, this one, because they brought on Minamino. It was one of the 2 players, and Atara and Fati are the 2 players that made way for Monaco. Can I come back to you, Simon? Were you surprised to see Fati make his way off the pitch with still 20 minutes to go, and that's not included added time? He seemed to be causing Tottenham a lot of problems. So were you surprised to see him taken off?
Yes, I was. I mean, I think him and Akliouche. I think they caused us so many problems by coming into the centre of the field and overpowering Bentancur and Polinia. So I was surprised to see them bring him off because, in my eyes, the two of them, they were creating so much trouble for us at the back and in the centre of midfield. So, yeah, I was very surprised to see him come off.
100%. Thank you. 79th minute, Spurs made another substitution. On comes Spence for Kudus. Dustin, would you say this point in the game, that's where, if we weren't already, Frank's clearly settling for the point, knows what we're up against and goes, look, I'm going to take that draw and move on?
I think anytime you take Kudus off, you're saying you're shutting up shop, because at this point, he's almost our sole source of creativity. I mean, Odebear had his best game for us so far, and he provided a little bit on the left, but it almost feels like Kudus is carrying the team on his back, potentially because there hasn't been a midfielder we've had like Dembele who's able to push people off the ball, retain possession, and you can fire a shot that a really hard pass at him and he can take it with one touch. On the other hand, if you fire that same pass to Richarlison, it probably bounces out to midfield. So I think that he is both our source of creativity, our ball progressor, also our out ball. So we are creating an extremely heavy dependency on Kudus for too many things, and it becomes very easy to take us out of the game by double or triple teaming him. So anytime you take Kudus off, you are basically saying that we're going for the draw, because I don't see significant creativity with him off the field.
Fair enough, yeah, absolutely. It's fair to say that Tottenham do rely on him at the moment. 83rd minute, Balogun made way for Monaco, and what was their last substitution? They only used 4. Tottenham used 5 out of 5. So yeah, as I said, it did end 0-0 in that game. So in terms of XG, expected goals wise, the second half just on its own, that 45 minutes plus added time was, well, for Tottenham 0.42 XG. For Monaco, it's 1.52. But the game as a whole, across the whole 90, this is where it is a little bit more interesting. Monaco is 2.72 to Tottenham's 0.97, so suggesting Monaco should have won that game. So considering that, Martin, do you think that's a good result in the end? Of course, expected goals, that's not the stat that matters. It is the scoreline, and Tottenham go there and get a draw.
Definitely. I can't believe it ended goalless. I can't believe we got a point out of it. If it wasn't for Vicario, we've probably conceded 2 or 3. So I think Vicario deserves to get a lot of praise for his performance, because he's been getting quite a lot of slack from our fans. Going forward, we looked absolutely hopeless. So the fact we have 1 point from that game is a big success, and we can be so happy that Vicario put in a performance.
100%. He did save us a few times, which we'll get on to. At the time as well, there's a lot of criticism about Vicario generally. Harry, can I come back to you? Because Martin did touch on the performance there. Would it be fair to say, without of course being reactionary, that it was a poor performance, maybe not what you were expecting before a ball was kicked?
Yeah, but I've highlighted this actually on my Spurs page as well myself. I just find our fan base way too reactionary, and it gets to a point where it gets so toxic. Like Bentancur has been consistently, like, the thing with Bentancur is he's average, but he does what he needs to do so well. And to see people obviously coming at saying, "Oh, we lost a Villa because of Bentancur." No, it's not. It was a poor team performance. Perhaps Franc actually didn't manage the second half as well as he could have done. But the point is that, yeah, for me, I think yesterday was a poor performance on the whole. But it's such a reactionary fan base, and it's every manager. Like, people say, "I'll give this manager time," but after 8 games and he's only played 3 Champions League fixtures, and they're already calling for him to go. It's ridiculous, and I just can't bear to see these these are sort of fans who will come on to podcasts and slate players, but then the next week when they score, they'll be calling them the best player in the league or top 5 in their position. So for me, I'm always going to be a fan who won't sort of chop and change opinions each week. I'm going to stay with what I think. Yes, some weeks players perform better than others, but last night, again, on the whole, was a poor performance. We can't be singling players out individually. The only player to be singling out from last night in a positive way is Vicario.
100%, Harry. Joe, completely agree with you on that. So yeah, I think you're 100% right in your assessment there. Just reactionary as well. It's little bit unnecessary, but I planned a little bit later on Spurs fans and how we think we're reacting at the moment to our start to the season, and in particular after this game. Simon, can I come to you? For you, do you think it was a case of good defending for Tottenham to get the draw, or do you think we were fortunate and maybe had to rely on Vicario?
Yeah, I think hands down Vicario is the reason why we got that point. At the end of the day, I think against a better side than Monaco, I think we could have lost fairly heavily yesterday. So yeah, I must admit I'm a critic of Vicario's. I have criticised him quite a bit lately, but yesterday, head and shoulders above any other player of our from our team. Yeah, he was fantastic, and he's the one that we can be thankful for that 1 point. Really.
Thank you very much for that, Simon. Can I come to you next, Dustin? And I want to get your thoughts overall on this game, but do you think Monaco will feel hard done by that they haven't won this game?
Absolutely. I think that Akliouche created a lot of chances, and it's only, I think Vicario had 8 saves or something like that. Whenever your goalkeeper is the man of the match, it's never a good sign. I would say that Monaco created a lot, but they came up across Vicario having maybe not the game of his life, but certainly a decent enough game. In my opinion, the problem that we have has been the same problem we've had for all other games, which is chance creation. It doesn't help that we don't have our first 3 choice strikers, and Richarlison, other than the brace that he had early in the season, he's just not got the composure and the first touch to convert for us. He tries on chaos and aerial duels, but if you give him aerial balls, he's normally up against 2 centre backs. Our chance creation is from Kudus, who is a inverted winger. So if he crosses in, it will normally be with his right foot, which isn't as good as his left. He had a sensational cross with his left the other game. But if he's crossing with his right foot, then the chances will actually come from a box crashing midfielder coming in on the right half space. So we're not creating the kind of chances that Richarlison can profit from anyway. So it just seems like we don't have the right fit for chance creation and goal scoring, because our best chance creator and our best finisher play in the same position. Our best finisher is Johnson, but Johnson hasn't played much this season because Kudus plays in his position. Johnson is the player that, even if he contributes nothing else to the game, he's in the right place at the right time. Kudus creates all those chances, but Johnson, who has the instinct to be in the right place at the right time, isn't on the field because Kudus plays in his position.
It's just typical, isn't it? And you're right. It's bizarre, isn't it? Really, we're sitting here, top scorer last season in Johnson finds himself out of the team, and we sit here, rightly so, I think, and say, look, where's our winger quality? It is strange in a way, but you've got Johnson and Kudus on the right, and I think personally on that right hand side, that's really good quality, let alone depth as well. So I think we're lucky on that side. I don't know about that left hand side, but yeah, a couple of you mentioned it now. Alderbeir's looking promising with him. We'll talk about him a little bit later. Martin, do you think, though, to flip it a little bit, the Monaco were there for the taking? I only say this because in particular in the first half, of course, remember they're under new management. It's just, for me, a lot of times where they give the ball away or they just didn't look 100% at it. And I thought early on, do you know what? We can go for them here. But I felt like we set up to try and get the point. So what do you think, Martin?
Yeah, definitely. When the game was progressing, even at half time, I was quite optimistic, thinking that we could smash and grab a 1-0 victory in the second half. And there's this one moment in the second half where we somehow managed to intercept a poor corner from Monaco, and we look like we're on the break, and Xavi Simons just doesn't find an ideal ball for Randall Colomwani, and it just completely stops our counter-attack. And even in dying minutes in stoppage time, I thought that there were moments where if maybe we had one of the players that are currently injured for us going forward, that maybe we could have had a moment of magic. But looking back at it now, I feel like I was quite falsely optimistic, and definitely Monaco were there for the taking, but we just didn't have the quality on the field to actually prove that.
Okay, thank you very much. I've trialled it before, but I've introduced a new question, or type of question completely from today. I'm going to trial it now. I've just thought of it, and that is, what one word would you all use to describe? Yeah, we can do it game by game, but in this case, the Monaco draw. So just one word. So you can absolutely explain why you've chosen the words. Be thinking. I'm going to go in no particular order. I tell you what, I'll start with myself to give you all a little bit more time to think, and I haven't even thought of one, which isn't helpful. So one word would I use to describe that result, or just performance in general? It can be either. You can choose. Confusing, maybe, in terms of it felt like one of those games that was a bit disjointed for Tottenham. So I would say confusing, but it's really interesting what word you'd use. Depends if you see it as a good result in the end, or you look more at the performance. Dustin, can I start with you? What one word are you going to use to describe that 90 minutes?
Ponderous. I think that was. I have a note from like the 24th minute. Our ball progression from our own half is painful to watch. You have Bentancur turning back rather than carry, and putting Danso and Porro under unnecessary pressure. And I think that's I know that this game the midfield wasn't Bentancur and Paulinho, but I think that in general that midfield combination of like two holding pivot or defensive midfielders, or box to box midfielders, and one creative player, it just means that we have two midfielders who are defensively solid, good in aerial duels, and good at interceptions and ball recoveries. So our creativity comes from defensive actions, which is winning the ball in the middle of the park or in the final third, and then we have an opponent that has just lost possession and they are in a state where we can capitalize on that. But that's not sustainable form of creative play. It relies on them winning their duels, and then we take the opportunity quickly. But if we're building up play, if we're up against a rest defense, that midfield combination, it can't progress the ball through carrying. They receive the ball, it goes back where it came from. They don't make progressive runs. They don't make one-touch passes. So what we're stuck with is going to the wings, and we always go to the wings, and then it becomes predictable because they just double team Kudus. So if we're too conservative to progress the ball through risky passes, it just goes back to the centre backs, wing back, or back to the goalkeeper, and then we have to reset the play again. Bergvall takes risks in possession, and that's good when he's in the 8 and 10 position, but he also does it as the 6. So the thing about Bergvall is that he's a good player, and I think that he can be the future for us in terms of ball progression through the middle. But the discipline he needs to learn is the risk reward, because he sometimes takes risks and risks losing possession in areas that are dangerous for reward that is not worth that level of risk. So it will come with maturity, it will come with time. But I think that long term, the solution to our lack of creativity is Bergvall and Simmons, or two creative midfielders and one a Paulinho or Bentancur, rather than two defensive and one creative.
Right, okay, yeah, no, it makes sense, doesn't it, really? I think we've got a problem in midfield at the moment, and I just think, like, we used to go back to the Villa game, and I think we've got quite a lot. Whether you think of the transfer window, we've got a little bit of depth now and quality in that midfield. We've got options to choose from, I think, anyway. And to have, like, against Villa on the bench, Sarr, Bergvall, Gray, and we're sitting here going, the midfield balance isn't right. And you've got those players to turn to. It isn't bad. It's a good headache, I think, for Thomas Frank to have. So finding that midfield 3, and we're not going to have a set in stone 3 or a set in stone 11 at all across the team every game. But I just feel with Paulinho and Bentancur, I think you're right, Dustin, but I just feel that they're great players, but they do a very similar job. When you've got two players doing a similar job, then the other jobs are kind of left. We talk about creativity. I think that is one of them. If you look, they're both trying to occupy a closed space. They actually work okay, I think, as a two, but a lot of them, if you look, it's sort of like, should I do it or you do it? I'm used to doing that, but you're next to me. And I think that's the problem. You've got 2 6s and we're trying to fit them both in. But really, if you think about it in football, you can only really play one in that position anyway. But hey ho. Simon, can I come to you? What one word would you use to describe that 90 minutes?
I had a little think about it. I think thankful would be the word. thankful for Vicario and for the poor finishing of Monaco, to be honest. I think that's the best way you can describe it, really. I was just very thankful, to be honest.
No surprise. I mean, Minamino in particular, come on, I think looked good and was given a lot of the ball, but how many chances did that guy over the bar or put just wide? I was thinking he's going to score, and but he just couldn't quite score.
Oh, yeah. He must have had 3-4 chances, I think, after he came on. And yeah, I mean, through poor finishing and Vicario's saves, we walked away with a point, really. So we escaped with a point more than walked away, really. So, yeah, but I must say, I did like the look of that Akliouche, because we had been linked with him in the summer as well. And he looks a really good prospect, I think.
Very, very good. He did look, and he was quite respectful. I think pre-match when speaking about Spurs is like, it's an honour to have these kind of links, but I'm focused on this game, so it's good. He didn't completely say, look, I'm at Monaco or anything, or I'm not going anywhere. He's really respectful, and I think that's quite good, even if you don't really want to sign him. He's just a football player being respectful of a club, and you don't usually see that as kind as he was, and was looking up to Tottenham. So that was interesting to hear pre-match. So make that what you like. Harry, what's your word that you would use to describe that game?
I think on the whole, it's just disappointing. It's a game that we should be winning. Like, it really is. Like, obviously, I think they said a stat yesterday, Monaco haven't kept a clean sheet in God knows how long. And obviously it's us that sort of gift them that, the first clean sheet in however many games.
Dr. Tottenham will see you now.
That's exactly, that's what I was looking for. Yeah, Dr. Tottenham. Look, obviously, when the final whistle went, it was more of like it was relief, and as Simon said, we were thankful. But again, on the whole, we shouldn't have to be worrying about that. We should be getting the job done because Monaco aren't really at our level. If we think about it, Monaco are a good side. They're at home, but we're competing in the Premier League, and we've got a fan base talking about can we push on to quarterfinals, semi-finals. If you look at our squad on paper, our squad should be doing so much better than that Monaco side last night.
100%. That's the thing. And I asked a question earlier about were they there for the taking, because I just looked at them at times. I thought they were, and don't get me wrong, they look dangerous and all that. But at the same time, if you've got a team sitting back, I think you can make me or you look kind of dangerous going forward. You can make anyone look dangerous if you decide you're going to sit in football. I just think Monaco, they unfortunately for them anyway, didn't do the basics. They didn't finish their chances, and if you ever notice, any ball in the box or any long throwing, we didn't have many real attacks, but it was a proper scramble to get it away. That's the team that have, as you said, Harry, you're spot on, have conceded lots of goals. And that was a big, because I read into it when doing the match preview and not knowing who the manager was going to be. But a big part of why they changed manager apparently was to do with their defensive record. So, of course, new manager comes in. It's always going to be difficult, but still, Tottenham should be scoring in this game. Martin, I want to know your word to describe that performance, because you've been looking at it, you've been thinking. Look at your reaction as well to some people. So I want to know your own now.
Yeah, Harry stole my word. Yeah, I was going to use the word disappointing as well.
Sorry.
No, you're spot on, because I know how I was feeling before the game. I was quite optimistic, and even when we go back to Thomas Frank's first interview, he actually mentioned if you don't take a risk, you take a risk. And that's exactly what he did when he put on those two sixes together with Bentancur and Palhinha. So he gave us that sort of pragmatism about us, but he sort of killed off our creativity. So, and not just with Thomas Frank, but generally overall with the performance, especially going forward. And even defensively, I was very disappointed. So, yeah, Harry got it spot on. So my word would also be disappointing.
Okay, that's good. Good minds think alike, as they say. I think that's absolutely right in this case. I'm going to quickly whiz through a few comments before we do move on, because there's some interesting in the YouTube chat. This is if they're listening live. So we at Spurs TV say that performance was very bad. The people saying Xavi needs more time to bed in, acting like he moved to Papua New Guinea and is learning to play a new sport invented by the locals who don't like human. I think his point is that Simmons maybe has been given too much time, but I'd argue the other way with that. But absolutely entitled to your opinion. Big up to Joe, left a comment. David Clark's word is classless. I didn't expect anything less. That's fair enough, I guess. He also says 1,000% behind Frank and his coaching staff, but sorry, until deluded Spurs fans realise it doesn't matter what system is played. This squad is packed with players that will never be good enough for Spurs. Make of that what you like. quite funny here. So Spurs don't have any Christian players because they don't have a clue what a cross is. I mean, it's quite quick thinking with that one. He also says that Fatih made Spurs players look very ordinary last night. I think we know how David Clark feels in the comments. And actually put something else since I read that out, saying Spurs don't have any creativity because the only creative players Spurs have at the club are out injured. I think I'd agree with that. Not sure about the rest, but I think that last bit is sensible. Right. Let's talk briefly then about the players we've got out, because 10 players were, as I call, ineligible. Tell was a choice of our own, but 9 were injured. So they're not going to play this game that 10 were injured. 9 were injured. Martin, do you think this is important to consider? Not as an excuse for Franc, for Spurs, for anything at all, but should it be considered? Like when you go to Monaco and sit back and you're missing your key players. Look at going forward. You've all kind of referenced it and mentioned it at times tonight already. Being without Kulusevski, being without Maddison, Solanke, these are big attacking players. So do you think that's a reason why Franc looked at this properly and went, look, let's get a draw and move on, or let's sit behind the ball?
No, because I think that Solanke, Kulusevski and Maddison have been out since the first day of the season. So I would more look at Romero and the progressive passes he adds to our build-up of play. That Kevin Danso, he's doing a great job as a backup centre-back, but he is absolutely levels below Romero. And that's not a criticism of Danso, that's the appreciation of Romero. So I think that's a massive miss. And also Udogie, Archie Gray had to play left-back. I believe it's because Spence is being sort of saved for the games that are coming up, because Everton will not be an easy game. And then we look fast forward to that. We've got very, very difficult games coming up. So I don't think it's an excuse. No.
Go on.
To that, I think one thing about having Danso instead of Romero is that defensively he's fine, but Romero's carrying ability and composure on the ball means that our build-up play is 30 meters further forward when Romero is on the ball, because he carries the ball, he gets pressured, he passes it to Van de Ven, he moves up again. And normally when Romero and Van de Ven are on the ball, we are starting our build-up play kind of like almost at the halfway line. With Danso, we're like 30 meters behind. So that means we've got a longer distance that we have to progress the ball and make attacking plays with. And when you don't have Romero making those through passes in the middle of the field, then we're stuck to the same old methods of ball progression to the wingers again. So I think it's a combination of like where we start our build-up play from and the lack of passes down the center.
Okay, that's again another good point. There's been a lot raised tonight. Thank you for that. So let's discuss a few individuals then in this game. We'll start with Vicario. We already have sung his praises. Simon, can I come back to you? Because Vicario got a perfect 10 rating against Monaco. And if you look at, for example, the Sofa Score Football app, they gave him a 10 out of 10. He made 8 saves in the game. Would you agree that he's deserving of his Man of the Match award? You're on mute, Simon.
Harry, as I said earlier, I totally agree. Fully deserved Man of the Match. There wasn't, bar Archie Gray, I thought had a good game even when he moved into midfield. But apart from them two, I can't say any of the others really were anywhere near what we would expect of them, to be honest, or how they have been playing recently. I think it was a no contest. It was Vicario won by knockout for player of the match, to be honest.
Exactly. And I always like on this podcast to go, who's your man of the match? But I was going through my notes, which I don't spend long doing, but I looked at it and went, right, get rid of that. No chance. Because there's not, I mean, by the way, if I'm wrong, by the way, please say, and you're not silly or anything, if you have any other player you're thinking of other than Vicario. But I looked at the game and I thought, there's not even somewhere where you could go there, maybe second to Vicario. Did anyone have any ideas if we couldn't choose Vicario? Because I couldn't think of any myself.
I think it's the easiest Man of the Match award to give out that I've seen in a long while, to be honest.
Exactly,
I would say the Man of the Match was probably Akliush.
Across the whole game,
Over the whole game.
I would still give it to Vicario. I'll still give it to Vicario, to be honest. I think he was just exceptional throughout the game, making stops. It doesn't matter if it was the first half or second half. It was because of him that we didn't lose 3 or 4.
I mean,
Okay.
what are your guys' opinions on Vicario and whether or not he should have a rest maybe and bring Kinski in?
I'm definitely very, very critical of Vicario, especially this season. But yesterday's performance certainly made me again appreciate his quality that he does bring. I just feel like a lot of the games where we want to dictate the tempo, he does sort of limit us with his ball kicking ability, and he's not as dominant on the crosses as Kinski. But I think that we want to look at Kinski and say he definitely deserves a chance, but he's extremely young, and we don't know how he would perform under pressure. He had a very short spell during that January-February period, but I think Vicario is definitely our number one.
Okay. Anyone else want to add? Go on, Dustin.
I think that with Vicario is a great shot stopper. So when he's playing well for you, it means that defensively you're fucked. In the sense that if Vicario is getting a chance to be a 10 out of 10, it means that defensively we have serious issues. You want goalkeepers that are great shot stoppers, but if that's all that they offer, it means that your team is set up to be a counter-attacking team. You expect 4 or 5 shots a game, maybe up to 8. I think it's more a question of how the team is, whether you want to be a possession dominant team or whether you want to be a more reactive team. And if you want to be a reactive team and you expect to have less possession, you expect your opponents to have a lot of touches in your box, then yes, you do need a good shot stopper. But if you have aspirations to win the league, then a good shot stopper is not enough. You've got to be a good shot stopper. You've got to also be an additional man, because that additional man allows you to pull teams out of position. And I think that's where, in the short spell that we saw Kinski play, just his range of passing, being able to do like little chips over players, having good mid-range passing. Vicario has okay short-range passing, bad mid-range, and bad long launches. So I think that Kinski's range of passing is what's impressed us. That said, I do remember that he had the run of games where he let in a lot of goals that we knew that Vicario would have saved. So he's still young, but I think his shot stopping is definitely not on Vicario's level.
Okay, thank you. Harry, would you like to give your thoughts on who should be Tottenham's number one? Because it is a topic of conversation. That might die down, though, after this Vicario performance.
Yeah, we'll bring Fraser Forster back. How about that?
Yeah, exactly.
I agree. It's again, I go back to being reactionary about the fan base. It's got to be Vicario. I mean, he's had 3 or 4 questionable games. Okay, fine. Keepers go through rough patches. Look at Sanchez at Chelsea. I hate to bring them up, but Sanchez had a few rough games, and again now he's back in that sort of flow and the rhythm. Vicario showed last night. If we had dropped Vicario last night, then we would have lost by 2 or 3, because some of those Kinski just wouldn't have got to. I do like Kinski. I'm a big fan of him. When he stepped in last year, I think it was Simon and Martin mentioned that January spell to February, when we played Villa away in the Cup, we played Liverpool at home. His debut against Liverpool at home, he was unbelievable. Clean sheet, he was fantastic. So I think as a second choice, Kinski's fantastic. But for now, it's got to be Vicario, because you don't. The thing with goalkeepers is it's a very difficult position to drop, because at most clubs there's 2 or 3 goalkeepers max. Obviously midfielders you've got 4, 5, 6, 7 to choose from, but if you drop a goalkeeper, then that's saying that's quite a bold thing to do. So unless Vicario makes blunder after blunder, I think for me he remains as number 1 for sure.
I personally do agree with you, but thank you all for your response. Thank you, Simon, for the question. Can I, as the host, flip it back to you, Simon, and get your thoughts on who you think should be Tottenham's number 1, since you asked a very good question?
I agreed with what Dustin said. I mean, shot stopping wise, and what Harry and that mentioned. Shot stopping wise, I don't think that is Vicario's strongest strength. I think he does worry me from crosses, and I don't think he commands his box as much. But Kinski, we haven't seen that much of him since I think he played. Was it against Doncaster Rovers in the Carabao Cup? I think that is his only appearance this season so far. And and he does. He looks good. A lot of promise. I have heard things. I had read things that he's maybe took his foot off the gas a little bit in training and stuff. Kinski possibly. That's what I'd read. But in my opinion, I mean, at the moment, I agree with what Harry said. If Vicario had not been in yesterday, we'd have lost that game. So short term, I think definitely Vicario has to be our number one. But with what Dustin said, I think longer term, for where we want to be and where we want to go, I think we need a stronger goalkeeper than both of them, to be honest.
Okay, fair enough. Kinski maybe for the longer term. Let's move on to a couple more individuals in this game. Then we'll get on to our Champions League campaign so far, then eventually on to Everton in the Premier League next. But Cullen Wani is a guy I want to talk about because he had a little cameo in this game. Martin, I'll come to you. What did you make of this little cameo? Because I looked at him and thought, you know what, you were bright in moments.
Yeah, in moments, I'd say. I think it didn't help that his teammates weren't helping to get him into decent positions. Like David Clark mentioned earlier, that maybe our players just aren't Christian, that they don't know what cross is. So, yeah, Cullen Wani was quite singled out, but it's, he's back from a dead leg, which took a bit too long. But yeah, basically he's back from injury, and hopefully he'll get more and more minutes under his belt, and just didn't really impact the game as much as we would want because he was just getting no service. So it's quite difficult to judge.
Absolutely, no. I think that's fair enough. Can I come back to you, Simon, and ask you about Moani? And we'll get on to Everton later, but a quick teaser for that. Would you start him against Everton? Now he's had that cameo off the bench. Is it, bold to put him in from the start?
I've been thinking about that all day today. 100% Harry, I would start him against Everton. He looks like he's getting up to speed with his fitness. I was a little worried that with the dead leg he had, it seemed a lot more worse than what they were saying. I thought he was going to end up being a zombie. It was a dead leg for that long. But yeah, Richarlison for me had a great start to the season, but I think he's fallen off a little bit now. So yeah, Moani for me straight away. And I've also heard Adebayor could be struggling, so I'd have Xavi maybe on the left and Kudus on the right.
Okay, that's a good shout. We'll get on to that Everton talk, but yeah, I just thought I'd mention it because it's a Moani's cameo, so thank you. And Harry, the last player I want to talk about very briefly is Lucas Bergvall. I'm sure we'll both be in agreement, as everyone listening will be, that, Bergvall is a fantastic player, gem, and we're very lucky to have him. Bright future for sure, but would it be fair to say that this game wasn't his best game, couldn't really have the impact that he wanted to?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. But then again, I don't think anybody had the impact they would like to last night. I think it's one of those games where it's just quite lackluster from the whole team. But Bergvall, for me, I can still see signs of Bergvall's trying to make things happen. Like when he gets on the ball, you can just sort of sometimes feel, on the edge of your seat that Bergvall can create things out of nowhere. So I wouldn't really look, personally, I wouldn't look too much about it last night. As we said before, the whole team performed pretty poorly last night. So, yeah, but Bergvall's a hot prospect. He's still very young, and obviously, when he came in last year, I don't think he would have thought he would have been playing as much football as he did. Because obviously, the main reason he was starting game after game after game was because of the injury crisis. He's still so young, and he's got 10, 15 years at least ahead of him. And if he keeps it up, then he's one of the world's best for sure. So yeah, about last night, I don't think there's any issues there for Bergvall at all.
Thank you, Harry. Thank you very much for that. So Tottenham's Champions League campaign so far, 3 games in. I remind people if they're not 100% sure. So Spurs 1, Villarreal 0 in that first game. Bodo Glimt 2, Tottenham 2, Monaco 0, Spurs 3. So that means 5 points from 3 games. +1 goal difference and 15th place in the Champions League table. Martin, what are your thoughts so far, in particular on this Champions League campaign?
Yeah, I think context is important, and we have 5 points from Villarreal, Bodo Glimt, and Monaco. So that does sound like a Europa League sort of group stage fixture list. So we haven't faced any of the big boys in the Champions League. But sitting with 5 points is fairly decent, bearing into context that we still play Slavia Prague and Copenhagen. So they are definitely teams that we should be beating. And then we still got Borussia Dortmund and PSG. So at the moment, we're sitting at 5 points, no losses. We've kept 2 clean sheets. So on paper, it does look quite impressive. And before the Champions League campaign started, before we knew who we'd be playing, definitely from the first 3 games, having 5 points, 2 clean sheets would be quite impressive. However, with the context and with the teams we've played, I would have probably hoped for more points. But, bearing everything with our injury crisis, sort of like you mentioned at the beginning, that we are missing Kulusevski, Madison and Solanke, who are, let's say, top 5 creators. So I'm happy with 5 points.
Okay, fair enough. That does mean that we are unbeaten. So that's pretty impressive. So Simon, I'll come to you on that point because we are unbeaten in the Champions League. I mean, that is got to be seen as a positive thing. How have you viewed the campaign so far?
Obviously going unbeaten so far, 3 games is good. On 2 draws away from home and the win at home. But for me, I think it's the result. Obviously, it's a results-based industry. So we're undefeated with 5 points. But for me, the 3 games, it's the performances. Me personally, I don't think they've been good enough in the Champions League. The performance, I think, even against Villarreal, at home, I don't think we looked that great. And I just wonder, is it possibly due to, I'm not saying it is, but is it due to Thomas Franc's lack of European experience? Because this is the first time he's actually managed in one of the European cups. So I'll take the 5 points, but the next few games, we need to win all our home games if we are going to be performing the way we have been performing, really.
Yeah. No,
Does anyone else think that maybe anyone else's views on the 3 performances so far in the Champions League?
I was disappointed with Bodo Glimt, to be fair. We rocked up there with Ange, playing that, obviously, on paper, worse football than Thomas Frank, with a clean sheet and a comfortable win. And to go there with Thomas Frank, at that point, with the full strength back 4 as well, with Romero, with Kudus, all these sort of players, and we didn't really land a threat on them until the second half at least.
Caveat to that, I suppose, is that, he inclined to disagree with me, but Bodo looked a lot stronger, I think, this season compared to last. It was a lot more competitive. But you're right, you'd think it'd be the opposite way around.
I think with Bodo Glimt, wasn't it when we played them in the Europa League, hadn't their season finished?
Yes.
If I'm right, so they weren't very match fit, whereas this time we played them, it was in the middle of their league season. So I think that might have had a bit of a sway on both games as well, to be honest.
Yeah,
good points. Yeah, very fair points from both of you. But Simon, you make an interesting point about Frank not being in Europe before. Totally right. He wasn't with Brentford. But again, the caveat to that, again, using that word, is that some would say, like Frank, what appeared to be going to Monaco and taking the point is quite sensible and something you would do knowing Tottenham's record in the past, away from home in Europe, being sensible and going, look, we want to win this game, but away from home, we're going to take the point. So can you understand also that side of it to go where, although you're right, he hasn't had that Champions League or European experience, but he knows sometimes then away from home in Europe, you just got to take what you can get. Points better than nothing.
Oh yeah, I do. I think he said it a few times in some interviews that if you can't win the game, make sure you don't lose it. So I'm happy with the point, but when we come to play the bigger teams, when we play PSG away, when we get to play Dortmund, we're going to have to perform a lot better than that, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. It's literally as simple as that. You are right. And I'm happy with how things are going. I think at the same time, those performances have got to, step it up a notch. But Dustin, before we shift the conversation into a little bit more like Thomas Frank and general criticism. Then we will move into Everton. Can I ask you whether you think, in your honest opinion, we could or should have, it depends how you want to answer it, have got more points on the board? Maybe looking at the fixtures, did you think that we'd get more than 5 from the first 3, knowing that they're going to get tougher after this?
I think that when you look at fixtures on paper, they will always find a way to prove you wrong, just because matches aren't played on paper. So a lot of the time, Romero being injured, I think when you asked me for score predictions for the game, I said that we have a number of players that we don't have replacements for, and if any of them are injured, all bets are off, and Romero was one of those players. So I feel that if anything, the biggest change I feel that Spurs needs to make is our medical department, because I don't know what's going wrong. Over the last 4 or 5 seasons, our injury problems have been horrific, and I don't know whether it's a style of play thing. It can't be, because we're running a lot less. Our distance run stats are much lower under Frank than they were under Ange. With Ange, you could kind of understand it, because we were running, I think it was something like 3 or 4 kilometers more than every other team in the league. So I completely understand why we were breaking down. We were losing players before the season even started, so I don't know what's going on with our medical department.
Good point. I think someone else was appointed, was it this week or the end of last week? Someone was appointed, and one of their roles is to do with sports science. There seems to be a lot going on behind the scenes, and there has been as well throughout the summer. But you're right. And, how many times have, myself and also guests said on this podcast that, we think that these injury records are going to go now, and it seemed to be that way. But, one injury turns into 2, turns into 3, turns into 4 for Tottenham. Of course, I listed that, names and kind of how many are out as well for Tottenham. A lot of them were, some anyway before Frank come in, but there are still new ones in. Solanke, I would argue, maybe is an injury of the past, because he looks like he should have taken surgery last year, chose not to. So maybe that is important to note. But still, the point is there are fresh injuries from this season. But let's move on to some Thomas Frank criticism then, because I never read my post down here, but I've been asked by quite a few people, some that agree and disagree with me. So I put something out this morning. I didn't think it's too much of it, actually, on X, and it done, it's blown up a little bit. And I just said, why is it so negative on X? I said, we are unbeaten in both the Champions League and Carabao Cup, and in the Premier League we're in the top 6. Performances haven't been perfect, but Frank hasn't been here long, and majority of us would have taken this before a ball was kicked. Martin, can I come to you? What do you make of that? And pretend I'm not here when answering this. Pretend it's not me. Would you kind of agree with that opinion that, would you have taken that, at this stage, just coming out that second international break, being unbeaten away from the Premier League in the Carabao Cup, which you played 1 game in, the Champions League, which you played 3 games in, but also find ourselves inside just about that top 6? Would you have taken that for a balls kicked?
No, of course. And like both you Harrys have today mentioned, that our fan base is very reactionary, and I think Thomas Frank is actually doing a very good job since he's come in. Even if we're looking at our attacking options, they're not at the level you would expect a Big 6 team to have. So there's a lot of context that needs to be brought in, and a lot of the fans that will be saying that Thomas Frank needs to go, which is completely ridiculous, and will be pointing, let's say, to Ange Postecoglou. I'd say they have short-term memory, because the context is so important. I think Thomas Frank is doing a great job, and he's just going to keep on improving the team. We're going to certainly find more balance and more creativity in the front line, which is the biggest issue that obviously Thomas Frank will be assessing and will be analysing with his team. So I'm very happy with Thomas Frank's job. I'd say we are quite lucky with the amount of points that we've accumulated since Thomas Frank has joined. But that's also, when luck goes your way, only goes to the ones that are ready for it. So, yeah, the people that have been negative are extremely reactionary. And I do believe that when you are at the top level, you do deserve criticism when you are not performing to a standard of a club that you are at. However, if we're talking 2 months or 3 months in charge and you're giving criticism for him to be departing, it's completely ridiculous. So Thomas Frank will improve us definitely if we stick to him for a long-term project.
100%. I think people maybe forget that he hasn't been here for that long. Dustin, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, one point I want to make is the importance of the right amount of patience and the right amount of time to give people in a role like this, just because there's so much variance and um, it works both for managers and players. If we had given up on Gareth Bale when he had that run of games without a win, we would have, lost out on not just the memories, one of the biggest transfers we've ever had, but also one of the best players that we've ever had in the Spurs shirt. So I think the point is that you want to give a player or a manager enough time to reach their potential. There are points where you need to cut it off and go, that's never going to work out. I think we did that with Sessegnon and a bunch of other players, maybe too long for some. So there is a balance of how much time you need to give a player or a coach. With a coach, there are a lot more variables. With a player, it's down to individual performance. They either take their chance or they don't. But with a coach, it's so variable. It depends on the board, it depends on players, it depends on the circumstances. There are things like COVID, there are things like, injuries. I feel that it makes sense to give a manager at least 2 summer transfer windows. Any shorter than that, it's very difficult. In particular, when you're in a club that isn't already running with a director of football system. I think that's a very big part of the problem. As a club, we ostensibly had director of football when we had like Commerly, when we had Arneson, but Levy was always micromanaging them, and eventually when he let go of them, we didn't have a director of football that set strategy, players that we sign, and making sure that if we replace managers, the manager that we replace with uses the same kind of players. So that's why we've had the reason our squad is in such disarray is because we signed a whole bunch of old players for Conte that didn't work out, and then we had like 2 or 3 seasons of being unable to offload those players. We signed players like Perisic, all close to the end of their careers, on expensive contracts, and we still have players now that we haven't gotten rid of, right? Brian Hill, Ndombele, and all of that, right? So I think that when it comes to chopping and changing managers, we need to think about, changing the manager doesn't solve a lot of problems. In some cases, the problems will haunt you for the next 2 or 3 seasons because now you've got to sell players that don't fit the manager style. Hopefully, now that we have changed the club structure, we will have a more cohesive way of signing players such that the squad balance works. The squad balance is completely off because we couldn't even register Tel for the Champions League. We didn't hit our homegrown quota. So there are structural problems above the manager that are the problem. And we shouldn't make the manager the scapegoat, because there are a lot of problems that Spurs has, but they don't all sit in the manager's seat.
Very good points made there. Appreciate that, Dustin. And that's the thing. And it could just be what I see, but I just find on X, generally across the board, there's not many, if any, Spurs fans that seem to be able to go, look, Frank needs time, etc., but also he's not perfect. I just feel like people can't have that balance. It's either, he's awful, get him out of the club already, which I can't understand, or he's absolutely perfect and, he's going to win the treble all of a sudden this season. It just seems no in between. It's very extreme both ways. And it's a shame in a way because, if we don't achieve those high expectations, you've got people moaning at both ends. Harry, can I come to you? Something that's really, here's wound me up really in recent hours and days is to do with the comparison between Frank and Ange. And I'm going to ask you this in particular because, we've spoken, haven't we, in depth before about Ange. You liked him, I liked him. I think if we both chose at the time anyway, we wouldn't have let him go. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I just feel like there's that comparison now and it just feels unfair. Do you think that Spurs fans should be able to go, look, thank you, Ange, you're a Tottenham Hotspur legend, you won a trophy, but also, Frank, I'm glad you're here, I'm happy with the appointment, I'm going to get behind you. It doesn't seem like many fans across social media in particular can seem to appreciate both. It just seems to be comparing all the time.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I think our fans have to wake up and realise that things move on. And left, he won us our first trophy in 17 years. What he did for us was brilliant. That night in Bilbao, Spurs fans won't forget. Obviously, I was lucky enough to be there that night, and it was the best night of my life as a Spurs fan. But yeah, Spurs fans need to realise that we've got Thomas Frank now. He plays different football. He's been with different clubs. He's not managing in the Scottish League, in the Japanese League, or wherever Ange managed, because Ange had the arrogance because he'd won he'd won small cups in small leagues. And that's really what it was with Ange. But now Thomas Frank is a manager who's come in. He's overachieved so much at Brentford. It's unbelievable. Like some performances that they were putting in home games was unbelievable. But yeah, Thomas Frank is, as we've all said on here many times this evening, it's a long-term project, and with Thomas Frank, it's only going to go in a positive direction. So give him time.
100%. I agree with that myself. Thank you, Harry. Simon, do you think the criticism is
Sorry,
fair? Yeah, go on, Dustin.
Sorry to interrupt. I hope you don't mind if I make an observation. I think
Course.
there is a slight change in the tactical method that's going on. For the longest time, we've had like possession-based teams where dominating possession, having control of the ball 60% of the time, creating lots of chances, inverted wingbacks. There's the whole tactical meta against in that. And this season we're seeing it completely flip, right? We're seeing like PSG kick the ball out to touch like it's rugby and focusing on winning the ball back up high. So I think that there is a tactical method that's changing around dominating possession and having intricate passages of play, and it's switching to a more counter-attacking kind of meta now. So Ange might have been the tactical dominant archetype kind of manager that potentially would have worked at a certain moment in time, but it seems that all the trends now seem to be reversing into a more reactive style of play where it's about dominance, it's about physicality, winning the ball in the opponent's third. So potentially the switch to Frank may also be hopefully an observation that the kind of manager that wins you games is changing as well.
Again, more good points. I appreciate that, especially about style. That's very interesting. Style's been interesting so far to observe under Frank. Thank you, Dustin, for those points there. Simon asking, and big accounts we're talking about as well, saying or even suggesting as well, some are just black and white saying it. They don't think Frank is right for the job, and some are starting to question whether he's right for the job. For a brief period. So, do you understand the suggestions at all that he maybe isn't right for the job? And what have you made of the job he has done so far at Tottenham?
Yeah, I mean, it's still early days, isn't it? We're about 2.5 months into the Premier League. For me, I don't think you can really judge a manager in that amount of time. They always say give them a couple of transfer windows so they can get their own type of players in. The one thing you can definitely see from the team is the solidness at the back. Now, really, after that was the first thing I think he needed to address when he took over from Ange, and he's definitely done that. But I think through that, we've also lost a little bit of creativity from having the solidness a lot more solid at the back. So we have lost that little bit of creativity up front. But for me, I just think the accounts that are saying and people that are saying he needs to be sacked, it's just so reactionary and just in my eyes, Harry, it's ridiculous. How can you judge anyone after 8 games in the Premier League? Was 6th. I mean, I'd take the start to the season we've had if someone had told me before the season kicked off where we'd be at the moment. So, yeah, and I think you've also got to look at the injuries as well. When Ange was in charge, I'm sure he went through a phase last season of he'd lost Romero, Vicario and Udogie for a certain period of time. Whereas you look now under Thomas Frank, we've got all our defenders, or most of our defenders are all fit, but our probably 3 most important forward players from last year, James Maddison, Kulusevski, as we've been saying, and Solanke, all 3 of them are injured now. So we are going to lack that little bit of spark up front because we have lost 3 quality players, in my opinion. So he's doing what he can with the team he's got at the moment. And also, I think, it's also with Xavi, it's just he hasn't kicked on yet, but it just takes some time to gel when they come from abroad, some of them. So with all things put together, I think he's doing well at the moment. I don't want to get rid of him for definite. So
No. I mean, again, something I will make very clear. I'm all for different opinions. Absolutely. I just a little bit surprised, to put it lightly, that people. I think there's valid criticisms to be had. Frank's not perfect, and to be honest with you, it hasn't been perfect of late. Some of these performances, results definitely could and should be better. No doubt about it. Someone that likes Thomas Frank in myself, but it just put me by surprise that after a couple of games that he's gone that way. I suppose I should never be surprised with some in the fan base, but.
Sorry, Harry, if we end up winning the next 2 or 3, everyone will start probably changing their tune and saying we're going to end up in the top 3, top 4 at the end of the season. And it's always based on just a couple of results, not the bigger picture, in my opinion.
Exactly. And I would gently remind people there are accounts out there on X that will make a living, and part of their job as well is to go off, feed off the engagement, the views. So they target things in a very certain way. For example, I spoke about it before without giving too much away. The conversation about Vicario was labelled, "Is Vicario fit to wear the shirt?" rather than how, in my opinion, how it should be worded. Is Vicario good? Is Kinski good enough to replace Vicario as number one? Should Vicario still be the number one? But it seems to be labelled as like you're not fit to wear the shirt, and that is a totally deliberate attempt. There seems to be a lot as well of stuff out there as well with people, saying all kinds of things. But just to people to be aware, I'm sure people do know. But Martin, do you have a concern? I'm sure you do, of what you've seen under Frank so far. But would you be able to pinpoint for us the biggest concern you've had out of maybe what you've seen? It could be, of course, performance related, results related. What is concerning you right now?
I'd say there are 2 things. So the first one I've already mentioned is Frank's pragmatism of choosing 2 6s together, which sort of isolates our number 10. There were multiple occasions where Vicario was having the ball at his feet, and we saw the massive gap between the 2 6s and Bergwijn in the first half. Bergwijn was literally playing like a false 9 at times, and there was just no chance that if Palhinha and Bentancur get at the ball and try and feed Bergwijn to create a chance, by the time Bergwijn actually has a touch, he'll be surrounded by 3 Monaco players without anyone to actually pass to. So I think that's the biggest issue that we all are seeing, that you put 2 double pivots and you're sort of limiting your creativity. The second issue I will have, not completely with Frank, but I'd say more with the players, is we saw Frank during the whole game yesterday. He was shouting at the touchline, trying to sort of motivate his players, and he started shouting from roughly the 30th minute until the end of the game, and it feels like he didn't feel the intensity being mirrored that he was expecting from the players. So that, I would say, is a ongoing issue, whether that was with Ange Postecoglou, with Conte, with Mourinho, that it feels like the players sometimes sort of don't get into that second, third gear that we would want them. So it felt like Frank was actually trying to sort of motivate them because he felt that they were still asleep. Maybe he was actually doing it for tactical reasons, but it sort of felt that he was constantly doing it throughout the game, trying to kick us on. So I would say that that's not a criticism of Frank, not at all. It's more of the players. So at the minute with Frank, the only issue I would have is the fact that he's not being risky. Like I mentioned, the first interview he had, he mentioned that if you don't take a risk, you're taking a risk. And that's sort of, he's not living by his words. He's actually doing that by using Bentancur and Palhinha together. And Bentancur and Palhinha are actually doing a great job together. They're doing the number 6 role very, very well. Especially Palhinha. I mean, he's been brilliant. But it definitely is killing off our creativity. So that's a definite issue we're having. And I feel like the teams have sort of snuffed us out on that right-hand side with Kudus and Porro, that teams are sacrificing an extra player to sort of double, triple up on Kudus. which is allowing Odobert a much more space in the past 2 games, which he should be using. And we saw more of him, and he's sort of slowly gaining confidence, which is great news for us. But Franc will definitely have to find a way to create chances apart from actually using Kudus out as that right winger. So, but other than that, I've been very impressed with Franc, and he's done the best thing he could, is actually focusing on the defensive aspect, and he's improved us defensively massively, bar the Monaco game.
Without a doubt. Thank you, Martin. You make some good points. And in terms of the number 6, you're saying you suggested, one there out instead of going with 2 sometimes. Would you lean towards Paulinho rather than Bentancur? Of course, it depends on the opponent, but do you know what I mean? As a general kind of rule of thumb, would it be Paulinho?
Yeah, definitely. Like you mentioned, it depends on the context. So Bentancur has different qualities than Paulinho. Paulinho is much better defensively, but Bentancur has that composure on the ball that Paulinho doesn't. So it definitely depends on the game. I think Paulinho this season has been much better than Bentancur because he's been much more active. But I wouldn't label that, okay, we should go for Bentancur, we should go for Paulinho. I think they both have different qualities, so it depends on our opponent.
Martin, do you not feel, me personally, I feel that Bentancur and Paulinho are a good 2 to have in defence when we are away from home. But for me, it's when we're at home and we want to be asking the questions and we're playing against a low block. I think that's, in my opinion, is then when only one of them should play. And we should have, like, say, Bergvall in the 8 to be carrying the ball forward. But when we are away from home, I think, they make us very solid. That's why I think, we have done quite well away from home so far this season.
Definitely. You make a great point. I actually made a TikTok about this, that the time, it's not why it doesn't work, it's when it doesn't work. And you made a great point. It's when we're playing against teams that use the low block, we are unable to create chances because they can eliminate the 2 6s. When it worked, Manchester City, when we played Paulinho, Bentancur and Sarr, and Sarr isn't even number 10, and it worked perfectly because we were able to intercept passes, we were able to stop fast attacks or even stop build-ups and counter-attacks. So very good point. I wouldn't say it's actually that we use them away from home. It depends on the opposition. And low blocks, it hasn't worked. Against teams from the top 6 or the big 6, it definitely will work. And I will have no complaints if Franc puts up a lineup with Paulinho and Bentancur, let's say against an Arsenal, against a Chelsea.
Okay, thank you very much. Good question, Simon. Thank you, Martin, for your original answer and also your answer there. I'm actually sharing on screen for people listening on YouTube, or you can see it as well while listening to audio if you're not driving. I wouldn't recommend doing it if you are, but you can see it nonetheless. 25-26 competitions. It's Paulinho and Bentancur combined. And there's so many statistics here, but just to pick out a couple. So, for example, when Paulinho and Bentancur start together, expected goals, it seems to be for Tottenham is 0.98, but without 1.27, which suggests they do limit the attacking capability. But to flip that, you go to defence. Expected goals against when they're both in the team, you've got 1.16, whereas off is 0.79. So there's so many statistics there. But Dustin, you were kind to share this initial statistic with me. So I want to know what your thoughts are on this. What does it reveal to you that maybe you didn't know, or does it support anything that you thought initially? What do you think?
I think that instinctively, when you think about it, you would expect that only attacking statistics would be affected, where you would, expect expected goals to be down, penalty box touches, and stuff like that. I think that where it's counterintuitive when it seems that the defensive performance suffers as well. But if you think about it, when you give up possession or when you're not as assured in possession, it potentially means that the opposition has more possession, therefore they have the ability to do more with the ball. I think that it goes back to ball progression. When you have the ball, even if you have possession, if you're not doing anything useful with it, then you're not really maximizing possession. Possession in and of itself is meaningless. It's what you do with the possession. There are many games where we have less possession, but we have more shots on targets, more penalty box touches. So it's really important to optimize and make your position effective for winning the game. And I think that what this shows is that with Paulinia and Bentancur in games, even if you are doing good defensive actions, if you're unable to progress the ball and you lose possession, you are, if under the cosh more often, you also concede more expected goals. You have a more shots on target received. So where the two stats that we're actually better at when they are on the field are PPDA, which is passes per defensive action. It's basically a statistic that determines how many passes an opponent gets before we pressure them. So that's clearly a defensive stat, and the other is directness. So these are the only two stats that we're better off at when the Paulinia Bentancur axis is playing when we're not.
Okay, that's a good point. Thank you very much. There is a lot of stats to pick there, but I want to move on now to Everton. Then I'll start with you, Martin. Coming back round to you, how are you feeling ahead of this game, Sunday's game in the Premier League?
Yeah, I mentioned last week to you that a lot of Tottenham fans are actually underestimating Everton at their new stadium, the Hill Dickinson Stadium. They haven't lost there yet. Like I mentioned, they actually beat Crystal Palace, who were on a almost 20-game unbeaten streak. By that time, they won 2 trophies. They could have gone ahead at least on 2 or 3 occasions against Manchester City at the Etihad. So I'm feeling quite nervous, especially what I've seen against AS Monaco.
I think that's normal to feel like that. Thank you, Martin. Has the potential banana skin written all over it, if you ask me. Would you agree with that, Harry, that it could be an obstacle for Tottenham?
I think so. Yeah, I think this genuinely could be a repeat of last season when we go 2-3-0 down. If we don't get up to speed quick enough, we could fall behind and we could concede a few. Because last year, yes, obviously, again, if you look at our starting 11, we think we had a back 3 of Gray, Dragusin, and Davies, which is obviously awful. But it's Everton flying. They, as Martin mentioned, they haven't lost yet, and why they're going to want to lose first to us? The only positive I'm going to take from this is that could we do the opposite of Dr. Tottenham and be the team to break that the streak of not losing at home. But look, no, I mean, I want to have some faith and optimism, but at the moment I've not got much, to be fair, because I think we'll struggle massively there. It's 4:30 obviously, so under the lights as well at the Hill Dickinson. It's going to be a tough one for sure.
100%. Thank you, Harry. Simon, how do you feel about this one based on what you've seen this week against Monaco?
I agree with Martin and Harry. I'm a little bit apprehensive about the game. Obviously, they lost to Manchester City their previous game, but obviously they couldn't play Jack Grealish in that game because of his loan. So he'll be back against us on Sunday. But I mean, our away record this season, especially in the Premier League, it is, I might be mistaken, is possibly the best in the Premier League at the moment.
Yeah.
So with that, I am a little bit apprehensive, but maybe not as fearful as Martin and Harry. I do like us away from home. I think we could cause them a bit of trouble. But I think there'll be a few goals in the game, I would have thought.
Absolutely. The game does look like goals, and often is between the two sides as well. And when there's not, there's definitely entertainment. I mean, I know we lost a game. I think it was 5-4, wasn't it, under Mourinho? I was having a look the other day. Was it February 2021, I believe, something around that time, in that crazy cup game where the Everton would score, they'd score, we'd score. It's one of those games, backs and forwards, like kind of, table tennis match. But in the end, unfortunately, we did lose that game. That was a crazy one. But no, that just shows you everything the game provides. Go on, Harry.
Didn't Davinson Sanchez get a brace that game as well?
He did,
How bad is
yeah.
that?
I'm glad you mentioned that. That's very true. I forgot about that. That's crazy. And I think Michael Keane's score for Everton was at the game after. Yeah, it was crazy things that happened in that game. But I didn't realise, because I went back and had a look a couple of weeks ago knowing that we were playing Everton. I didn't realise it was all the way back in 2021. It shows you how quick kind of time goes. But wow.
If I'm not mistaken, I believe Harry Winks put in a world-class performance that game as well.
Probably did, yeah. I'm not going to pretend
I don't think he did, to be honest. I don't think he did. I think he had a stinker.
I can't remember. I'm not going to pretend I do. Wouldn't surprise me either way, but Sanchez a brace. That, if you said that to any Tottenham fan that didn't watch the game, I think they'd struggle to believe you. But thank you. Can I get your thoughts, Dustin, as well, lastly, on this game, a trip to, I always nearly say Goodison Park, but of course now the Hill Dickinson Stadium?
I think how we do it is predicated on who we have fit. If we don't have Romero back, I have serious concerns. Romero plays an important part, not just as the captain and his role in the defense, but in ball progression and center. So there's so much of what we need from defensive solidity, from aerial duels, from his proactivity in snuffing out threats in the midfield. It is very difficult to overestimate his influence in the game, both as a defensive player and as a creator. So if Romero is fit, I feel a lot better about our chances. If he's not, I think the best we get is a narrow win or a draw.
Okay, no, I think that's totally reasonable, to be honest with you. I mean, I'd take a narrow win. That'd be fine with me, with or without Romero. Ideally with Romero. I do share that with you. Can I come to you, Simon, and get your thoughts on Everton this season? Because Martin mentioned it there. They are unbeaten at Hill Dickinson Stadium, but how do you think they've started? Because it's been a little bit mixed for Everton in terms of, I think they've drawn 2, they've won 3, but also lost 3. But overall, if you speak to Everton fans, they seem happy with where they are now under David Moyes. So what do you make of them?
Yeah, I think at home, obviously, they've in the Premier League, they've won 2 and drawn 2. In their last 5 games, I think they've only won 1, which was the 2-1 win against Crystal Palace. So, yeah, there's definitely been a massive improvement from the previous manager, in my opinion. Now they've got David Moyes back. And I think the new stadium has had a bit of a reaction for them as well. So, yeah, I think, I can understand why a lot of Everton fans are quite happy at the moment. So, yeah, there's a lot of promise. And I think Jack Grealish and Kieran Dewsbury-Hall have been great signings for them as well, to be honest. But I just think they lack, possibly like ourselves at the moment with Solanke, they lack a striker, really.
Very good strike. Very good shout. Sorry, there. I've actually already recorded, which will be out very soon, the next 24 hours or so, my Everton opposition preview. And interestingly, the Everton fan that joined me there said that one complaint I have is that we just don't have that number 9. And you're right, he compared the situation to Spurs as well. He says, look, we've got Beto, but he just isn't consistent. And then you have to go to someone a little bit younger in Barry, because although they agreed, Everton fans across the kind of board, the consensus was Calvert-Lewin leaving was right. They haven't really brought anyone else in. He's like, we've got these shiny wingers, Grealish and Dye, even the likes of McNeil off the bench, but where's our kind of quality striker? So absolutely right, I think, to mention that, Simon.
He's a very good player as well, that Ndai. I think
very good.
I think he's a top goal scorer, if I'm mistaken, at the moment. But yeah, I think Jack Grealish will be the one that we'll have to watch out for, really, because he's had a good start to the season for him.
Yeah, he definitely has, 100%. Let's keep the topic on Jack Grealish then. And Martin, I'll come back to you. Would you take Jack Grealish at Tottenham? And what was your thinking in the summer when we were linked to him? And has your thinking changed at all now?
I would definitely take him. I mean, he was a regular starter for Manchester City. He was brilliant at Aston Villa. Of course, that time has passed. And I think he's reviving his career at Everton. The Everton fans clearly adore him. So fair play to Jack Grealish. However, we have a young Odegaard, which hopefully has potential to, shine up at our number 17. So would I take him now? Definitely. He would go straight into the lineup, wouldn't he? So all the best to Jack Grealish, and hopefully he has a bad game against us on the Sunday.
well said. I couldn't put it better myself, especially that last bit. With all due respect, thank you for that. And I'm going to go around the panel now and do a quick fire question, and it's literally just the words yes or no, depending on what you choose. And the question is, would you take a draw for Tottenham in this game? So yeah, would you take a draw? It's a yes or no. I'm going in no particular order at all. Simon, can I start with you? Yes or no to a draw?
I'd say yes. After yesterday's performance, I'd say yes. I would take a draw because we're away from home. But I think we've got an opportunity to win. But yeah,
Okay.
I'd take a draw. Yes.
Thank you very much. So Simon saying yes to that. Dustin, is it a yes or no to a draw if you're offered?
I'll take a draw because I'm not seeing. It's okay for us to try things and fail, but what I'm seeing is that we're not actually trying things. We're not actually taking risks. I'm fine with us taking risks. So if we take risks and fail and lose, that's okay. But if we bang our heads against the wall doing the same old thing, then that's where I get concerned because it's the definition of insanity. In fact, I'll do something like really off the wall, like play Johnson. Because people complain that he doesn't contribute to the game. He's there to score goals, and right now we don't have a consistent goal scorer. Richarlison's not doing it, so I don't see the harm in trying Johnson out, especially if he shows up in pockets where he can just at least finish.
No bad shout at all. We'll get on to that kind of predicted and prep lineup in a little bit, so we'll discuss Brennan Johnson.
Dustin, would you play him on the left if Adebayor's not fit?
I would actually play him in the hole because for me he's the best at getting into positions and ghosting in where defenders don't expect him. So like the point I was making earlier about Kudus and Johnson being our best creator and best finisher, and they both play in the same position, but if Kudus is on the right and he's cutting something back into the right half space, that's where Johnson would be anyway. So to me, the fact that because a footballer's position is just nominal, because the position depends on whether they're in position or out position. Kudus and Johnson don't actually, they play on the right of attack, but they don't play in the same place, right? Kudus plays more on the touchline, Johnson always cuts inside. So if they're not playing at the exact same position, there's no reason they can't exist in the same lineup. And the concept of them playing in the same position means they can't play together in a team at all isn't really true. In fact, if you have Adebayor and Kudus both doing the same thing, which is making cutbacks, because Richarlison isn't winning crosses, so if our main chance creation from the wings is cutbacks, who's best in our squad at showing up at the right place for that? It's Johnson. So it doesn't matter which wing he plays on, as long as we have chance creation that's coming from the wings with cutbacks and late runs into the box, which is what his specialty is.
Okay, thank you again. Good question, Simon, on the spot, and thank you, Dustin, for the answer. But let's stick to this quick fire question. So both Simon and Dustin, you've said that you would take the draw if you're offered. Harry, can I come to you next? Yes or no? Would you?
No, I wouldn't.
Oh.
No, I wouldn't take a draw because again, these are sort of games that if you want to be in, if you want to be in a top four race consistently, if you want to be in a title race, which I believe our squad's good enough to be on paper, then you've got to be winning these games. We slipped up against Bournemouth at home. We slipped up to Villa. We can't slip up for a third time. So no, I wouldn't take a draw. We have to win this game, and it would be a big statement win if we were to win it as well.
It definitely would be. I agree with that. Interesting. You said you wouldn't. I like that though. That's ambition, isn't it? It's very easy. And one thing I will be critical of Franc and the kind of team so far, and I've been very impressed with the mentality, how we've come back. But the other side of it, and this sounds crazy, although I'm happy with that mentality to never give up. Also, I'm worried, believe it or not, also a bat mentality that we seem to be getting a draw, and then it could just be the way I'm interpreting it. But you're hearing players go, "Well, that's a very good result." And for example, Wolves at home is a good one. Okay, we salvage a point, well done. But at the start of the day, I think you're really going to be there day and night to find a Spurs fan in and around that stadium. Anyone that went to the game or anyone watching at home that would have taken a draw. And that's the problem. Okay, you get yourself in a sticky situation. A point's better than nothing. We should be going from that and going, that was bad, but at least we didn't lose. But it just seemed like that in the end, we almost look back and go, that was a good point. And don't get it wrong, it was a point salvage, but is it a good point when you look at Wolves after that? If you know what I mean? So that both sides of the mentality are maybe a good thing, but also a little bit of an issue. Just to kind of put that out there. But Martin, can you end with saying whether you think, well, not what you think, whether you would take a draw or not?
Yes, I would.
You would. Oh, Harry, you're on your own. It's tough because I want to agree with you, Harry, but I look at it and go, I just think this could be a potential banana skin. If I was presented with a point, I probably would take it, but I like the way you look at it. That's the right way to be ambitious.
Harry is the only one that actually, is emblematic of today's to do.
Exactly. Yeah, he is. 100%. That's the way it should be. So we're all being conservative. So, and understandably, but Harry, I like the difference in opinion. So before we go to score prediction, then I'm going to ask you all your predicted lineups. This is what we think Thomas Frank will go with. Of course, if you want to talk about what you would do within that, that's absolutely fine. So Dustin, can I come to you? Which I do apologise. I've just seen you're deep in thought. So sorry to interrupt that. It was a bad choice. What do you think that Thomas Frank will go with then? 1 to 11.
I think the back three picks itself. I don't know if Udogie is fit. If Udogie is fit, it's a no-brainer because we would need the width in support. It's always better to have a left-sided player just because the passing angles that are available are much better. And the problem with Spence on the left is just he always passes on the inside, and with an already inverted player, that just means that you have no width. For midfield, I think that we should go with Sar. We would need him. I think between Paulinia, Bentancur, Paulinia, Sar combination, I feel that Sar provides enough legs. He's not terrible defensively. I think it's a better balance than Paulinia and Bentancur. I think that Paulinia and Sar would give us a bit of mobility, good defensive cover, but you also have the benefit of Sar being one of our best box crashing midfielders, and he's chipped in with goals, he's chipped in with crucial interceptions. So I think that gives us a little more thrust in midfield and a bit more. He's not a dribbler per se, but he's a good straight line carrier of the ball, and we need a bit of that in midfield. So I think Sar as midfield would help. Kudus also, of course, picks himself. If Odebear is fit, I might go with Tell actually. Either Tell and then maybe an early substitution for Johnson, just to see what we can do.
Okay, appreciate that. It's a couple of, I don't want to say surprises, but a couple of interesting shouts in there that others in the panel might want to pick up upon. Simon, can I come to you next? What do you think that Thomas Frank will go with? And again, like I did say, mention what you would change as well.
I think the back four, obviously Vicario being goal. I think the back four, it will be Porro. I'd love Romero to be fit. I agreed with what Dustin said earlier about Romero. You feel a lot more confident when he is in there next to Van de Ven. But I've got a feeling it'll be Dancer and Van de Ven again. I don't think he'll be fit. And then on the left, once again, I agree with Dustin. If we could have Udogie there, it'd be fantastic. To me, he would start above Spence in that left back position every time, just because he's naturally left-footed. But once again, I don't think he'll be fit, so I think it'll be Spence there. And then the midfield, I wouldn't be surprised if it is Paulinia and Bentancur again, because we are away from home, and he does seem to me, I don't know about you guys, but it does seem to be Thomas Frank's preferred midfield combination, them two. And then personally, I'd like to see Bergvall in the number 10, Kudus on the right, Xavi on the left, and Mawani up front. But I think Tell will play up front, because it seems after every Champions League game so far he has, because he's not in the Champions League squad. So I think Thomas Frank will actually go for, in the midfield, he'll go for Bentancur and Paulinia, Xavi in the number 10, Tell up front, Kudus on the right, and if Odebear is fit, he'll be on the left.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Simon. Harry, what do you think the Franc will go with?
Yeah, I think Vicario obviously will definitely start in goal. Back four, as Simon said, Spence is probably going to be the most obvious choice at left back, and then Danso, Van der Ven, Porro. I think, again, similar to Simon, it'll be Palini and Bentancur. But if it was up to me, I'd probably, as much as I love Bentancur, I'd drop him for Sarr and have Paulinho and Sarr, and then play Xavi in a 10. But if Odebert's not fit, then what I would do is have Paulinho, Sarr and Bergval on the 10, and then play Xavi off the left, Kudus on the right, and Moani up top. Yeah, for me, I think that's exactly what I would do.
It's a very strong team. Thank you very much. And lastly, Martin, what do you think that Franc will go with? And where's your team kind of that you would pick as well differ from that?
I think everyone has made great points. The only one I'd probably change from Simon's is actually having Richarlison up front instead of Tell, because it is true that after every Champions League game, Tell has started, but I think Tell will start against Newcastle in the midweek. So I think Richarlison will start as, again, Everton was his home. So maybe that's extra motivation. He actually scored there last season as well. And 2 seasons, no, not last season, but 2 seasons ago. So definitely a connection there. So I see Richarlison starting up top. And what I would probably want to start would be maybe that change. But actually, no, I wouldn't. I agree with Simon that I think Bentancur or Palhinha, it makes sense to start them against Everton because Everton are a very physical team. So I think that Bentancur or Palhinha in this game does make sense.
Okay, fair enough. Maybe it's that type of game and where Everton have got a strong midfield, a Trezeguet. Do you go with both? Yeah, it's tough. Frank will have to see what he does go with, but I think the feeling is that he will go with both Bentancur and Paulinho in that one.
That's a great point, Martin, about Richarlison up front, because he does give over that he's that type of player going back to his old club. He'll really be up for it, and we could see potentially the Richarlison that played against Burnley. So I think that's a really good point.
Very good shout indeed. Yeah, you're right there, Simon. So let's end then. My final question for the podcast tonight to all of you is your score predictions. So we're going to go back around in the opposite order, starting with you, Martin, your score prediction.
I said that I would have taken a draw. So if it ends 1-1, I would be happy. But like Harry did mention, that we should be more ambitious because we are Tottenham Hotspur. So my score prediction is 2-1. However, if it ends 1-1, so it would be a 1-1 draw, I would be very happy. So, but hopefully 2-1.
Okay, thank you very much. And Harry, your score prediction?
I'm going to go 2-1 as well. Yeah. I think
Love it.
we'll concede, and I actually think we could concede first. But again, I think we'll score because away this season, as Simon mentioned earlier, we've been fantastic. I did actually check quickly. We've played 4, won 3, drawn 1, lost none. So we're still unbeaten away. But yeah, I'm going to go 2-1 as well.
Love that. Continuing our positive away record, a great start, unbeaten start, as you say there. Thank you, Harry. Let's hope you're right. Simon, what's your score prediction then for Sunday?
It's a full house so far, Harry, because even though I'd be happy with a draw, my score prediction's 2-1 as well. So I'd take I would take a draw 2-2, but got to be positive, and with our away record, and hopefully Vicario carries on like he did yesterday. So yeah, I'd definitely 2-1 to Spurs.
Love that. Love this positivity. And Dustin, you're usually the one that sensible but very optimistic. So what is your score prediction?
Just to be different, I think we'll go 3-2. I think that Grealish will give us problems, so I'm not sure that we'll only concede 1.
No, fair enough. Yeah, Grealish and Die. There's going to be problems everywhere, even off the bench for Everton. But thank you very much. I think that wraps up nicely for this episode of the podcast. Has anyone got any final questions they want to put to any panel member or any comment they want to make before I end?
I was just wondering, with Sarr, I know he had a slight knock a few weeks back, but I think he had a great start to the season. But since he's come back, to me, it just seems like he hasn't had much of a look in. I don't know what you guys think, But yeah, at the start of the season, I thought he was looking to have his best season yet for us and looking really good.
It's a good point. Does anyone want to pick up upon that and say anything about Sar? No?
I can't say too much more because I think Simon has probably said all our thoughts, that he started off great, got that knock, and then we were all sort of puzzled why he's not actually getting looked into the team. So I have no idea why. Maybe because at that time when Sal got a knock, we actually signed Xavi Simons, and he started to implement him in that number 10. So maybe he's decided that, okay, I picked my middle three that I want to be playing on a consistent basis, which is Palhinha, Bentancur, and Xavi Simons. Maybe I'm completely wrong, though.
Okay, that's a really decent shout, actually. And that's the thing, Sal was very good, wasn't he, in that 10 almost? We were certainly centrally in ahead of everyone else, which I think was the 10. But he got that knock, and since coming back, he's had a few minutes here, in the last couple of games. He just hasn't, well, in my opinion, struggled to adapt to the game. But what can you expect as well when you come in with just that short period of time? But that's a really good point to raise, Simon. Dustin, do you have a question? I've got a feeling you're looking to ask one.
Yeah, I was wondering from the rest of the panel, how do you feel Van de Ven's been performing as captain? Because my opinion is that it feels like the armband is heavy. He still plays decent, but he doesn't rampage down, play risky passes as captain, and he's Holland's wingback and is capable of it. But it almost feels like as captain, he feels he needs to be more reserved and less expansive in actually developing play down the left, which he does like more often when Romero is playing.
Do you know what? I would fully agree with that. And actually, that almost leads me on to a point I wanted to make about Son. When Son was appointed as captain, I don't personally think he was ever the same player as he was before. I think it might have been the responsibility of being captain, but for me, Son was just not captain material. He wasn't the sort of leader on the pitch. He was obviously he was a club legend and he deserved it. But when you appoint a captain, you need someone who's going to dictate, who's going to shout on the pitch, who's not afraid to put a word in. And for me, Son wasn't that. So I think for Van de Ven is cautious of perhaps flying down the left-hand flank, losing it, and then obviously as captain he's got that responsibility. So I feel like Van de Ven may now just be a little bit more calm, composed at the back, because he's got that responsibility of the captain's armband. So I think that's what I'd make from that.
Palhinha for captain.
Yeah, certainly got experience for it.
Good
Not a bad
shout.
shout.
Good shout.
Yeah, not a bad shout at all. But no, that does wrap us up nicely for this episode. So thank you to everyone who's listened. If you're listening via audio, please drop us a follow and a 5-star review. If you're listening on YouTube as well, like and subscribe. If you are new, reminder on any platform as well, you can listen after any time. It's always available, and let us know where you are listening from around the world and what time of the day it is there. So thank you to my fantastic panel for tonight. Let's go through and see where you can find them all across social media. Firstly, Martin, thank you very much for coming on. Quickly becoming a channel regular, which I'm very delighted to say. You're stuck with me. Apologies. Where could people find you across the socials?
So you can find me on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it. So Martin _Franc. So that's FRANC, not like our manager with a K. And you can also find me on TikTok. I'm called The Spurs Pursuit. So yeah, thank you.
Oh, cool. I can't remember if I follow you, so I'm going to be on that while I ask Harry where people can find him. So go on, Harry, take it away. Talk to people about what you do, because you do an awful lot and some really good stuff too.
Thank you, Harry. So X is basic. It's just my name, as you can see here, with an 8 at the end of it. But for me, my sort of best platform is Instagram. So Spurs Direct is just underneath my name there. That's my account I've been building up on Instagram for a while. We do, on there it's my Matchday posts, collaborations, content, that sort of stuff. We've got, what is it, Harry? About 2,500 followers on there now, I think. Yeah, so that's probably my best sort of social media platform. And then away from the Spurs sort of thing, we have a college podcast, which we've been nominated for the Content Award finals, just like Harry has as well. So, so that's where you can find my stuff. But for Spurs, the Instagram page is definitely the best.
Absolutely. And you do always do some good stuff. And it's great to always do stuff with you and have you on. So thank you very much, Harry, for this one. Thank you, Simon, you making your debut tonight. Very solid debut. Apologies that there's no goals, I'm going to blame you as the jinx, because with every single podcast, this is actually had looked at this. Every podcast I've actually been on, there's been a goal, because there's one that wasn't a 0-0, and I wasn't on it. I was unwell. So there you go, a little statistic in there that I just got a message on the podcast. So I'm blaming you for that. But where can people find you across social media, Simon? And talk to people what you do, because you also do some great work.
I'll be back on in 125 after another 125 games. You can follow me on X at Sanders, SIE Sanders, down the bottom, and also I am the co-chair of Dudley Spurs, and we have got our evening coming up with Steve Perryman on Friday the 14th of November at Starbridge Rugby Club. If you're interested, I mean, Harry can say as well, what a fantastic guy. You know, from 1969 to 1986, he played for Spurs. So the stories he's got are endless. So, yeah, if you are interested, dudleyspurs.co.uk/Steve Perryman and get your tickets. £25 each for a night. Yeah, can't go wrong with a true Spurs legend.
Guys, please, honestly, do check that out. And Simon, it's been a pleasure to collaborate you on that and promote the evening and speak to Steve Perryman. But you're absolutely right; it's a terrific guy, and it's interview as well, and like he will with your evening as well. So check that out. He revealed an awful lot, and we talked kind of in detail about captaincy and how he thinks he's changed, some for the good, some for the worse. So it's just really interesting to hear in his opinion how the game's evolved, and he talked about some real big stories, you know, Paul Nicholson, and some really things that even surprised me. So he's a great guy.
Is he getting
it's a fantastic guy. Thank you for having me on, Harry, and I've with the panel as well. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Good to hear.
Really have. So thank you for inviting me. Really appreciate it.
No worries. Always welcome back. Thank you so much. And last but not least, wow, honestly, commitment is a word that is probably used a little bit too much, but it cannot be used if you're underestimating this case of Dustin at this kind of time. Again, I always say to you, and I'm never quite sure whether it's a case of it's really late at night and you stay up for this, or you get up really early. Either way, it's incredible. But where do people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Luminoir, LUMINOIR, and it's 3 a.m. that we started, but when the clocks go back, it'll be 4. So.
Oh, it's getting even worse. Well, unless you go to bed, I guess maybe it's a little bit later getting up. I don't know. Have you slept at all? Do you mind me asking?
I slept in after dinner because I had a call at midnight, so I took a nap before my midnight call, and now this.
Wow, that is just.
You go for a little sleep now, Dustin.
I might just start the day.
I love that. Oh God, that's great. I feel bad, but thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate all of you. But yeah, do check out all of these guys across social media. But a massive comedy Spurs. Hopefully, next time you'll be hearing from me, we'll be talking about a win against Everton. Up the Spurs.